Recording in progress. That's good to know. Then, but I got really ambitious 2 weeks ago, and I decided to wash all my windows and screens. But as this beautiful light was coming in, all of a sudden I saw dust on my screens. I'm saying, wait a minute. I just washed these screens 2 weeks ago. This isn't supposed to be happening. So I was having this beautiful, exquisite moment. And all of a sudden something went wrong about it all. So that just indicated to me different things. And now the kids are actually at my front door. Okay. I maybe have to invite them in. They can say hello to you. We'll see how that goes. I'm going to turn off this message. So yeah, so we kind of, so the main point though of my, I don't know if I'll ever come back to this dust in my screens again topic, but so the main point is living in the present moment of this Dharma talk. It's called One Fortunate Attachment, the Bhadekarata Suta. And it's a sermon that the Buddha gave 2,500 years ago about living in the present moment. So I'd like to go through that with you a bit. And I also want to say that Bodhi Bhikkhu, or Bhikkhu Bodhi, translated the Bhadekarata Sutra as one fortunate attachment. It might also be said, now I can't read Pali at all, but it might also be understood as only one fortunate attachment, or one fortunate attachment only. As you know, in Buddhism, we tend to think of attachments as causing us difficulty and trouble. However, this particular sutta brings out that we do have one attachment that it's very fortunate that we have. And Thich Nhat Hanh also really appreciated this sutta. But here's how he translated it: our appointment with life. Now that's quite different from one fortunate attachment. And because I can't read Pali, understand it at all, I can't make any comment. But I might be able to say what my thoughts are about that a little later. So this is how the sutta begins. Thus have I heard, on one occasion the fortunate one was living at Savatthi in Jeta's grove, Anathapindika's park. There he addressed the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis thus. Bhikkhus, Venerable Sir, they replied, the Blessed One, the Fortunate One said this: I shall teach you the summary and exposition of one who has one fortunate attachment. Listen and attend closely to what I shall say. Yes, Venerable Sir, they replied. The Fortunate One said this: let not a person revive the past, or on the future build hopes. For the past has been left behind, and the future has not been reached. Instead, with insight, let the person see each presently arisen state. Let the person know that and be sure of it, invincibly, unshakably. Today the effort must be made. Tomorrow death may come. Who knows? No bargain with mortality can keep it and its hordes away. But one who dwells thus ardently, relentlessly, by day, by night, it is that person, the peaceful sage has said, who has one fortunate attachment. So basically, the Buddha is admonishing us to let go of the past and all of the delights we might have had in the past, not bring them up. And a little later, he'll explain how we bring them up and we delight in them, nor to build hopes on our future. There's this one line that says here, no bargain with mortality can keep it and its hordes away. When I read that line this time, I thought of Kubler-Ross, who, when I first read her the stages of dying, she had 4. I just Googled it lately, and now she's got 5. And I don't know if she's still living, but no. Okay. In any event, I wonder if she would have said more. But here they are, in facing one's death. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So this word bargaining comes up. And I can see that happening. I say, oh, if I just do this, maybe, the disease will go away or whatever. We're always kind of bargaining with things. As I was thinking about this a little more, maybe there's a lot of other things that happen, like joy, happiness, in facing when we're actually faced with some terminal diagnosis. I'll talk a little later, at least I think I will, about a chapter from the book You Have to Say Something by Katagiri Roshi, who says, what's the difference between the life we're living and someone who's facing death? He basically says there's no difference. So this is the one fortunate attachment, that we have this attachment to really understanding what the present moment is. We keep going back to that, just trying to be present with it. Because if we do that practice, we can realize to some degree or another that this is where we find peace. It's not through thinking about things in the past or dreaming about things in the future. When I was in my early 20s, I read some psychologist who said, young people look to the future for their happiness, and older people look to their past. At that time, I couldn't believe that an old person would look to their past, because at that time I couldn't understand that me in my 20s looking back was not what I was doing. I was looking forward to the day I would graduate from school, the day I would be done with certain stuff and be my own boss, so to speak. Well, today, and I'll be 70 in it's coming up pretty soon, maybe less than 2 weeks. I certainly don't look to the future for my happiness. So, when I'm 80, everything's going to be rosy. That's just not going to happen. So this is what the Buddha says more particularly. How does one revive the past? Thinking I had such material form in the past, one finds delight in that. I had such feeling, perceptions, formations, and consciousness. One finds delight in that. That's how one revives the past. Now, I think most of you know what he's saying. He's using the 5 skandhas, which are like 5 components of our existence, 5 aggregates. They're pretty arbitrary, but we can all identify with them, like our body, feeling, perceptions, formations, our consciousness. Those are pretty integral parts that we can all identify with. They could be subdivided into a million other categories. And how does one not revive the past? Thinking I had such feeling, such bodily form in the past, perception, formations, consciousness. One does not delight in that. So we just don't, you just see the thought arising, and it's like, the expression we use sometimes in Zazen, where you just see the old tapes rolling around over and over again. And after a while of just seeing those old tapes going around and around, and especially maybe during a long retreat, you just say, this is getting to be not so interesting anymore. And how bhikkhus does one not build up hope, or how bhikkhus does one build up hope upon the future? Thinking, I may have such material form in the future, such feeling, perceptions, formations, consciousness, one finds delight in that. And then conversely, how does one not build up hope? It's by one not finding delight in thinking those things about the future. And how is one vanquished? When I looked up vanquished, and I think it kind of means swept away or tossed away. Or overcome. With regard to presently arisen states, one who is unskilled and undisciplined in Dharma regards material form as self, or self as possessed of material form, or material form as in self, or self as in material form. And the same with feelings, perceptions, formations, consciousness. And how is one invincible in regard to presently arisen states? It's the converse. One does not regard material form as self, or feeling, perception, formations, consciousness. And that's the end of the sutta. It's quite short. Some of the monks were displeased with the shortness of the sutra. And they went to the monk called Mahakashana. And Mahakashana's specialty was to state in detail what the Buddha says in brief. And so they went to Mahakashana and said, can you explain, a little more about this than what the Buddha taught us? And this happened several times, if not many times, throughout the Pali Canon, that the monks get scolded by Mahakashana because they say, You're right there in front of the Buddha. Why didn't you ask him this question? And I've always appreciated that because it's kind of another little teaching of how we miss the moment when it arises. For instance, I just look at it personally. I say, well, there's all these things I could have asked all these teachers I've been acquainted with in the past, but I wasn't there wasn't present enough to ask the question, be it Katagiri Roshi, Naozaki Roshi, Thich Nhat Hanh. I was Deepama in India, Harada Roshi. I was in the presence of all those people, but my mind wasn't acute, or I didn't have the confidence or whatever to ask them directly questions. So they ask him in detail, but he really doesn't give a whole lot more detail. But I'll share it with you. He goes on to say, I understand the detailed meaning to be it as follows. My I was thus in the past, and forms were thus. One's consciousness becomes bound up with desire and lust for that. Because one's consciousness is bound up with desire and lust, one delights in that. When one delights in that, one revives the past. And so he goes through each of our senses and says that same thing. The ear and sound, nose and smell, tongue and taste, body and bodily sensations. And just saying that same thing, bound up with desire and lust for those things, wanting them back. So that's all I'll say about that, except for I'll say in detail what's his explanation for how one builds up hope on the future. And he says, thinking my I may be thus in the future, and forms may be thus, one sets one's heart on obtaining what has not yet been obtained. Because one sets one heart, thus one delights in that. When one delights in that, one builds up hope upon the future. And again, going through all the six senses. But I'd like to have you contemplate this a little bit, bound up with lust and desire for something in the past. And this is where it might be really nice to know what the original language is and how that's been transferred or translated. Bound up. And then one sets one heart on obtaining what has not yet been obtained. This is really kind of quite profound. How much time do we spend trying to obtain what has not yet been obtained? And how much time are we bound up with desire and lust for something that has occurred in the past? I'm going to go on and refer to a passage from a chapter from You Have to Say Something from Katagiri Roshi, edited by Steve Hagen. It's called There's No Escaping This Moment. When you sit in Zazen, how many beings sit with you? Right where you sit, many beings, emotions, thoughts, memories, physical sensations appear from moment to moment. Yet this moment is very simple. So why not just take care of it with all of your heart? But you can't. There are too many beings there, and they drag you away. If you see pain, pain drags you away. You try to make yourself relax. Because you're in too much pain, you start to think of other things you could be doing, better things that would bring you more benefit than just sitting here doing nothing. But the idea of benefit is just another creature sitting right here in that very moment. You think, oh, yes, there's something better I can do. I can do that. But your body and mind are still just sitting here. It's only your thinking that has gone off wandering, stumbling over all the beings of the moment. I think it's not so hard for us to see. Isn't that exactly what the Buddha was speaking about in that passage, in that sutta that I just read? Little different language. It's a little more accessible, probably. But this language, he says, if you see pain, pain drags you away. Now, that drags you away is the same word that Buddha used as how are we vanquished? We're taken away from that moment that we're in. We start to think of other things we could be doing. Well, that's like dreaming about something we're going to do in the future. Or it might be something we did in the past that was pleasurable, just so we don't have to face what we have to face right here in this moment. We probably really can't understand this really well unless we've set some zazen, I think. That's not to say that zazen is the ultimate teacher, because life itself and all of its manifestation is the ultimate teacher. But sometimes in sitting zazen, we can just see things so clearly of how we're dragged away, even if we're not like suffering intensely. Just an ordinary day, we can see how we're just dragged away by our ideas, trying to obtain something we don't think we have. Then he goes on, he says, what about those persons who are facing death? And this is also relates to that former sutta where Buddha brings that up. Is their situation different from yours? There's really no difference. It is exactly the same. A man who was dying of cancer once told me his situation was like sitting zazen, because many beings would arise in each moment. I agree. No matter where we are, no matter what we face, we have to take care of this moment. That's all. This next paragraph is very important. It's just one sentence. No, it's two sentences. This moment, and it's italicized, is not the idea, italicized, of this moment. If you see it as a concept, it becomes frozen. But the real moment is not frozen. Whatever we might think about this moment, our practice is just to return to it. This moment is where all beings exist. Even though we have doubts and fears, even though we ask, why do I have to die? No answer appears. Only this moment is real. There's no escaping. All beings, including doubt and fear, drop off in this moment. Your situation is really no different from someone who is dying of cancer. When you see death, you will see that there is no escape from this moment. So what should you do? The only thing to do is to see and deal with this moment as it is right now, right here. Well, I've ended my talk a minute early. So I invite any comments or questions you might have.
Okay, if I may ask, I've always been troubled by the idea that we are attached to the importance of the present moment and how elusive that it is and how much suffering I have because it's so hard to grasp. Is there a way to explain that attachment as being different than attachment to other things like the future or the past? How does that work?
Well, at least based on what I talked about this morning, I think the main thing is we can't think of this moment as an idea to attach to. It's not an, of course, we have the idea, present moment. And as long as it's an idea, it'll just be another creature there to cause some trouble for us or for us to wrestle with. So it has to go beyond our conscious thinking. And that could be while we're doing Zazen. Now, just how would you do Zazen without thinking that you're doing Zazen? Or making some dichotomy like the thought that I'm doing Zazen. And also without dreaming about the past or thinking about the future. How would you do that? Well, there's a way we can. And as Katagiri Roshi said, actually, what did he say? I'll have to look again. Something about it's very easy. Didn't I say that? He said it? I'll look it up. Oh, yeah. Yeah, she says, this moment is very simple. It really is. It's totally simple. So why not just take care of it? But then he goes on to say, yes, but, it's really not that easy because we're human beings and we have a consciousness. It does appear, though, that the Buddha and others are saying, well, we can have this attachment to actually trying to understand what this present moment, what's actually arising. We can keep exploring that. And that's one of our probably only good attachments. We're fortunate to have that attachment. And it just came up yesterday again. There's a new group practicing here. It's the first time they've been here. Right now there's about, I think 16, maybe 17 people. And they've never practiced here at Hokyoji before. They're in a little bit different tradition than Katagiri Roshi's tradition. They're still Soto Zen people, but it's a little bit of a combination between with Soto and Rinzai. And they have a few different practices. And I sat in on one of them the other day. It was interesting practice where we just kind of talked. There was a facilitator, but it came up that, and I've heard this before from, particularly recently from Daigaku Rume, that said, first, we also need doubt. We need doubt about this present moment. It's like, well, does this really work or not? We hear Buddha talking about it. I had a passage from Dogen also about it from the Fukanza Zengi, but basically saying the same thing. So they're all basically, we can look through, find many teachings that say this is it. I mean, you can look at Rume, the Sufi person, Rumi, yeah, and see that in his writings. We can see it in almost every spiritual teacher. That really, it's coming into this moment where we find our peace and happiness. It's not by looking for it somewhere else. But our mind is really quite convinced that no, this isn't enough. But that can be fine. That's kind of a doubt. We need that doubt. Okay, what is it that's not making me feel complete right here, right now? So we need the doubt, and at the same time, we need faith. They're working together. Yes, and there's a way we can know that. If we practice diligently, we can realize that, yes, this present moment, just where I am right now, and let's not call it by any name, let's not even call it present moment, because that gets really confusing, becomes an idea. We can sense this is where we're going to find our peace. It's nowhere else. So that's the faith part. Because we can only have that faith if we've actually had some experience about it. And finally, the last thing is great effort or determination. We are going to resolve this doubt and faith through our continuous practice, relentless practice, as the Buddha says. So the main point I would say, Taigyo, is don't make the present moment into some kind of idea. Is that helpful?
So I think that's it for questions, it seems. Thank you, Dokai-san, for your talk today. So I have a few announcements. One, I want to point out that in your chat box is a link to donate if you would like to express your gratitude for these talks. You'll find it there in the chat box. Next Sunday, we have Reverend Jodo Cliff Clusen, head monk at Prairie Mountain Zen Center in Longmont, Colorado. He'll be giving the talk titled The Four Noble Truths and the Bodhisattva Vows. So we hope to see you next week as well. Let's see. So we'll close by chanting the four vows, which are in your, now they're going to be in your chat box. Yep, there they are. So let's do the four vows together. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Thanks again, everyone, for coming. Have a wonderful Sunday.